And so we're here at the end of chapter 21, or coming to the end, and we've been learning about the final story over here with the hanging of 7 of Shaul's descendants. And I just wanted to go back to verse 11 and 12. Verse 11 and 12, if you look at the context here, it actually brings out a very interesting point. Verse 11 says, we're in chapter 21 of Samuel 2, and when verse 11, David was told what Rizpah, the daughter of Aiah, Shaul's concubine, had done. So it mentions that David was told what she did. And then it jumps to verse 12, and David went and took the bones of Shaul and the bones of his son Yonasan from the inhabitants of Yabesh Gilead, who had stolen them from the square of Beit Shan, where the Plishtim had hanged them on the day that the Plishtim defeated Shaul at Gilboa. In verse 13, he brought up from there the bones of Shaul and the bones of his son Yonasan, and they gathered together the bones of those who were hanged, and they buried the bones of Shaul and his son Yonasan in the land of Binyamin, in Selah, in the grave of Kish, who was his father, Shaul's father.
Hello?
I'm sorry, was there a question? No. Okay, so what we see here is that it mentions that David was told about what Rizpah did. And then it jumps to telling us about David going and burying Shaul and Yonasan. So what is it telling us? That, by the way, guess what? The king found out about Rizpah. Rizpah was this very unique, she was really a very special woman, it seems, that she went and stayed, 24/7 to guard the bodies, that they shouldn't be desecrated from, which interesting, is really it puts shows us a great emphasis on how we have to respect the body of a person after the body is dead, which is also an important to mention, because you have no idea how many people in today's day and age that are Jewish are opting for cremation. It's really sad. They're desecrating their own body. And this is it's so rampant, unfortunately. And there's a lot of ignorance, of course. People aren't aware of how against Torah it is. But here we see how this Rizpah really risked her life. She really jeopardized her health. She's never going to sleep, really, 24/7. We said it was 7 months this lasted, that she was hanging out by these 7 individuals that were hanging, and she made sure that the birds wouldn't eat away at their flesh, or the animals wouldn't come and devour their flesh, in order to in order that their body should have respect. And in fact, to the extent that in Jewish law, we try never to even do an autopsy. Sometimes you can't get out of it, but we try that there shouldn't be an autopsy, simply because it's a disrespect for the body. But here she did this tremendous thing. But the interesting thing is, why does the verse have to tell us that David found out about it? David found out. Okay, I'm sure he found out a lot of things that were going on. They told him that, verse 11, it seems very surprising. So I mentioned that it goes in connection with verse 12. Yes, Ben, what would you like to say?
I'm thinking maybe that's when David understood that he didn't do the right thing with Jonathan and Shaul, and that he should go and bury them.
So that's that's the correct answer, at least along the same lines as what I was going to mention, and that is based on what the Radak says and the other commentaries, that what was going on here is, when David heard what she did,
Yeah.
So he then was inspired to do more for Shaul and for Yonasan. He said, you know what? If she did that, she was hanging. She basically gave her 7 months time. She just did nothing but hang out over there to guard the bodies. When David saw or heard that what she did, David said, we also have to do something extra for Shaul and Yonasan. And interestingly enough, it says that the verse says a line, they did all that the king commanded. In verse 14, and they buried the bones of Shaul and his son Yonasan in the land of Benjamin, in Selah, and in the grave of Shaul's father Kish. They did all that the king commanded, and God was responsive to the prayers of the land after them. Now, what does that mean? They did all that God commanded. What all that the king commanded? What did the king command? So Rashi over here tells us that the king commanded that they should eulogize in every city Shaul and Yonasan. So they took Shaul and Yonasan's body around and did eulogies, even though it was after 12 months when normally you're not supposed to, we don't normally eulogize. But the fact that it was within 12 months of the death of the seven descendants of Shaul that were hanged. So because it was within that time, they were being eulogized. So David understood that this would be okay to eulogize Shaul as well and Yonasan. So sort of like it was like included in the other eulogy. It was sort of like along with the other eulogies, David arranged that they should eulogize Shaul and Yonasan. So what David really did was he rectified this both issues, both sins that we were talking about that caused the drought. One sin was that the murder of the Givonites, and that David rectified by trying to make peace with the Givonites, and he ultimately gave them what they wanted, the 7 people to be hanged. And then the other thing was that Shaul was not eulogized properly. So David now, he actually eulogizes or arranged for eulogies in all cities of Israel. And this is, you can see it in the Rashi. Rashi says that, Kol asher tziva hamelach, all that the king commanded, he said, lahaspid aleim b'chol arei Yisrael, to give a hesped for them in all the cities. So that's the way, that's at least the way Rashi learns. There's another interpretation that it just means to give him a hesped, but doesn't say in all cities. But Rashi learns all cities got this. He really went around to try to offer a eulogy in all cities. Yes, Susan.
I thought Rizpah was an angel, not a real person.
No, she acted like an angel, but she was mentioned earlier. We mentioned this yesterday, that she was mentioned earlier in the book of Shmuel, where
Right.
there was a man by the name of Avner, special
Right, I remember. Yes,
man, who actually took her as a wife, because she was originally married to Shaul as a concubine,
right.
and so she wasn't an angel. I don't know. You can't marry an angel. She was a human. She
had special traits, though. She had
Yeah.
special abilities.
special traits. She really gave her health up to a certain extent. She really risked her health to do this. Now, so that's a very powerful point here. I'm sorry. Was there a question? I couldn't hear clearly. No.
Somebody in one of the phones was talking.
Let me mute everyone. Okay, I'm going to mute everyone. So So what we're seeing here is that Ritzpah's act, it actually encouraged David to do something, which seems surprising. You would think David was so righteous that he is, he needs Ritzpah to do something that will encourage him to do something. But what you see is that sometimes even a regular person can inspire someone, can encourage, motivate someone who's maybe even more righteous than them. We don't know you have no idea the power of one mitzvah and how it has a domino effect. It has an impact on you're like an example, and you're able to influence others. So it's not only what you do, but it's also what you are how you're able to influence. And we see here how Ritzpah actually influenced David to do this major. He didn't plan on doing this, it seems, initially, because he initially said, you don't eulogize after 12 months. Shaul and Yonasan are buried. Okay, goodbye. That I can't really do much for. This, for to appease the Givonites, that I can work on a deal. I know how to make deals. I can try to bargain them down to work with them and appease them, do what we need to make them happy. Well, but David initially had said, like, there's not much I can do. That's a sin, and we can't really do much. And now David said, no, you know what? I see Ritzpah, what Ritzpah did, and he sort of like bent over backwards to be able to honor Shaul and Yonasan. I'm not sure if this is a source, but normally we wouldn't take people out of their grave to bury them somewhere else. And here we find that the Shaul and Yonasan are taken out of their grave in order to be buried in the family plot with Kish, the grandfather, the father of Shaul, the grandfather of Yonasan. So what it seems is this would be an example of, that in order to do that, this would be acceptable. Here also is moving them to a grave in Israel. Until now, they were outside of the Israel proper. And now they're actually being buried in Israel. And so that might also, be a source that, a situation where it's permitted to take someone who's buried already to be able to move them. But again, it's all about honor. And normally we don't want to disrespect the body by moving it around again. But here, of course, this is a case of honor, to be together with the family grave and so on. I guess we find it as well with Joseph, where Joseph is moved to Israel. His bones are taken they take the bones to Israel. So you see the concept of, after someone being buried, to then move them for their honor. Okay, so the next part of this chapter deals with war. And as I mentioned earlier, there is discussion among the commentaries about the order when these things happened, and you'll soon see why. Why would we want to say that they happened earlier? Wouldn't it make sense that everything is in chronological order? But based on the interpretation and understanding of what these stories are, like one of the stories, according to the simple interpretation, the way the commentaries want to say, it definitely happened way, way, way back. So let's go through some of these wars that affected David. So we're going to start in verse 15. We're in chapter 21, verse 15. The Plishtim again made a war with Israel. David and his servants went down and fought the Plishtim, and David became faint. So here we have the Plishtim fighting, And David is actually in a very dangerous state. And then it says in verse 16 that Ishbi Benoiv, who was one of the children of the giant, he had a spear that was 300 copper weights, and who was girded with a new sword, and he declared that he would strike down David. Now, some of the commentaries say it wasn't exactly a spear; it was the handle was this weight, so on. But basically, he had some type of an instrument. It shows how strong he was. He was a very powerful person, and he was the son of a giant. Oh, we got some hands up over here. Okay. Susan.
Well, who are these giants? Who are they talking about?
So the giants are connected to Goliath. If you remember all the way back, the war of
Yes,
David
I
and
remember
Goliath.
that. I remember that, but I didn't know that they're going to show up again. That the
Right.
same. All right.
So David and Goliath, in the Hebrew, it's Goliath. Goliath was a giant. Now, Goliath also had a family. And so these are connected to that.
Are these descendants of this guy?
So it's not descendants. We'll soon see that one of the verses says the brother. It refers to the brother of Goliath. Different ways of interpreting it. It might mean Goliath himself. So it could be a way of a story that happened way back, which we'll soon see. I'm really jumping to verse 19 where we see that. But that's what we mean when we say the giants. And what we're talking about, and the reason why I say they're relatives of Goliath is because one of the in verse 18 it mentions was one of the children of Harafa, and in verse 16 it says Yelidei Harafa. And what is this Harafa? Harafa literally means some type of a grain, and it's referring to a woman that we read about on Shavuos. Everyone knows the name Ruth. Ruth was a convert to Judaism, but she had a sister-in-law who chose not to convert to Judaism, and her name was Arpa. So the rabbis in the Talmud tell us that Harafa is the same as Arpa, and it gives reason why it calls Harafa and so on, but it's a little beyond the scope of this class. The specific reason why she's called Harafa is that her main name? Was that her nickname? What does Harafa mean? It has to do with threshing. So the Talmud uses it to as a negative element of her life, that she was involved in affairs constantly, that people were constantly threshing her, so to speak. But the point is that it's her descendant was Goliath, and these are other descendants of hers. So they're not descendants of Goliath, they're descendants of Arpa. They're related to Goliath. So these are the giants. So Ishbi Benoiv was one of the children of Harafa, this Arpa. And it mentions about how big his sword was, emphasizing how strong he was. And he was girded with a new sword, which also emphasizes this idea that he wanted to show off his strength. So he declared that he would strike down David. And in verse 17, Avishai, the son of Tzruya, came to his aid, and he struck the Plishti, and he killed him, killing him. And then David's men swore to him, saying, "You shall not go out to war with us anymore, so that you not extinguish the lamp of Israel." And so David's soldiers were concerned about his wellness, and they were afraid because the understanding is that David almost died, if not for Avishai, as it says earlier, that he became faint. So this story of a war with the Plishtim and the giant Ishbi Benoiv, David became faint, and now the people are starting to realize, you know what, we better not have David come to any more wars. This would be dangerous for him. And the verse continues and says, so that you not extinguish the lamp of Israel.
The candle.
The candle, okay. Candle of Israel. Yes, David.
In the Amloes, it says with Harafa.
Yeah.
Some say that his father's name was Harafa, while others say that Harafa means the giant. And it's taken from the name of the tribe of giants known as the Rephaim, which is talked about in Deuteronomy 2:11.
Yeah, thanks. So that's an alternative shot. What I mentioned to you was from the Talmud. The Talmud says that the Talmud in Tractate Saita mentions this, that it questions was her name Arpa or Harafa? One of them was a name, one of them was a nickname. If you say her real name was Arpa, then you have to explain why did they give her the nickname Harafa, and that's where they threshed her, meaning that she had numerous affairs. The other understanding is that her name was Harafa, and they nicknamed her Arpa, which implies that they sodomized her, that she was sodomized. But in any event, she was the sister-in-law who did not convert to Judaism. And her sister, well, the other Moabite woman who was her relative in two ways, they were related, Ruth, she was she was the mother of, she became Jewish, and she was the grandmother of royalty. So the story here is that these are the children of either, as David says, just the children of a giant, or of Arpa, who we know had giants as grandchildren. We know, or children. We know Goliath was a descendant of hers as well. Yes, Ben.
So that means that King David and Goliath were relatives.
That's an interesting observation. Not close relatives, but yes.
No, not close relatives. Yeah.
Right.
But Ruth and Orpha,
if you go mechutanim, they were mechutanim, because they had married two brothers, Ruth and Arpa.
Right.
Okay, so in any event, Avishai was the one who came to his aid. Now, who was Avishai? We have to remember that Avishai was the brother of Yoav. Avishai was the brother of Yoav, and Avishai came to help out and save David. Now, which means that this was a nephew of David, and Avishai saved his uncle. Now,
it's all in the family.
Verse 18 talks about another war. It happened after this that there was another war with the Plishtim in Goiv, and it says it was then that the Sibchai Hachushasi, who struck down Saf, who was one of the children of the giant. So it just mentions this, that this was another story of destroying the giants. And verse 19, there was another war with the Plishtim in Goiv, and Elchanan, the son of Yarei Orgim, which literally means forest weavers. It says he was the
Was the son.
One second. In verse 19, let me just start from the beginning of verse 19. There was another war with the Plishtim in Goiv, and Elchanan, the son of Yara Orgim, from Beis Lechem, struck down Goliath of Gas, who had a spear with a shaft like a weaver's beam. Now, what does this mean? Is this the story of Goliath? Who killed Goliath? We all know that David killed Goliath. So what does it mean here in the verse in 19 that someone by the name of Elchanan, the son of Yara Orgim, killed Goliath? So one way of understanding it is it doesn't mean he killed Goliath. He killed someone who was with Goliath. In other words, his brother. He killed the brother of Goliath. And another way of understanding this is it refers to a story that happened way back. This is referring to David. David, another name for David is Elchanan. So now this is a trick question. What was David's other name? And here we have it. His name was Elchanan. Elchanan ben Yarei Orgim. He was the son of Yarei Orgim, of forest weavers. What does that mean? So he weaved for the Beis Hamikdash. The Beis Hamikdash is sometimes called the forest. So he weaved for the Beis Hamikdash, his family, means because his father actually weaved for the Beis Hamikdash. Yishai would weave for the Beis Hamikdash the curtains. So
Mordechai wants to say something.
Oh, Mordechai, yes.
Yeah, regarding the last question, Rus and Orpah, even though they were married to brothers, they were also sisters. They were daughters of Eglon, the king of Melech.
So they were right, but
sisters and sister-in-law.
But that is right, which is interesting. Well, so I guess you could say David was a great nephew.
I think they had two Goliaths.
Great nephew. Great nephew.
What I'm thinking.
There were two Goliaths.
Yeah, well, I think once Goliath was killed, there might have been another
one
person named Goliath.
Might have named right. So the commentaries don't say that. And again, as I mentioned to you, that the Gemara says that this is referring to the story that happened way back earlier. And it's mentioning it all. It's mentioning this story over here together with the other wars that they had with
but that would change David's name and would change David's father's name.
Well, true.
It's a little difficult.
Well, you have to understand that there were nicknames then, just like we have now, just like you have the Candy Man in Shul.
Yeah.
And it's not really changing his name, even though now the kids call him the Candy Man, but it's like a nickname based on his job. So the same thing is here is the name Yarei Orgim was based on his job. They gave him that name. You know what I mean? It's not exactly not complicated to learn it that way. Obviously, the verse is trying to teach us something and tell us about how he weaved the curtains for the Beis Hamikdash, emphasizing that, which maybe is teaching us how to merit to have children like David, who was even with all even with the few questionable things that he did, he was considered the greatest king of Israel and the holiest of holies. So, could be that a good segula, a good method of meriting such a thing is weaving for the temple, weaving the curtains for the temple. In any event, my time is really up.
They say, Rabbi, that he might have been a descendant of Bezalel.
Of Bezalel, because they all came from Yehuda.
And they weave the curtains. He weaved the curtains in the Beis Hamikdash, in the Mishkan.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Shkoyach. Good point. Okay. All right. Well, everyone have a Freilich and Purim. And if I don't see you tomorrow at our event, we're having an event in Bell Harbor for those that are local. If I don't see you there, Freilich and Purim, and we'll see you in Mitzvah Hashem on Wednesday. Sei gesund.
Thank you, Rabbi. Same to you.
Purim.
Thank you, Rabbi.